Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. This image was almost entirely backlit to give a rimlit look. However, the addition of a small amount of front fill completes the picture. And in this video I'll show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so this is the subject, this strawberry. And what I'm going to do is mount this in such a way that you can't actually see the mount. And what I'm going to do is use one of these. This is a retort stand or a lab stand, and in this I've just got a clamp on the top here, and I've just put a piece of welding rod along the top of it like that. So what I'm going to do is mount the strawberry on the end of this rod like so. And then from the camera's point of view, all this will be hidden. But before I put the strawberry on there, I'm just going to put a backing on this, just to hide this and give a background for the final picture. Now the background will be black. So what I've got here is a small amount of black card. And what I'm going to do is just thread this onto the lab stand, like so. Just push that on there, and I've just added a small amount of blue tack just to hold that in place. There we are. And now I can just add the strawberry to the front of the welding rod. There we go, being careful not to push it all the way through. I don't want to be able to see the welding rod at all. Okay, so just place this on the table, something like that. And with that, it's time to set up the camera. So for the camera, I'm using this medium format, and I have a 120mm macro lens on the front of it. So the full frame equivalent would be something like a 70mm macro lens. At this sort of distance, you're going to need a macro lens in order to get a good focus on your subject. Right, so I'm just going to place the camera on this tripod at the front here. Now my camera is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to follow along and see the results as I get them. So I'll just turn the camera on. There we are, and the software has recognized the camera, so I can show you all the settings that I have on the camera in the software here. So these are the settings that I have on the camera at the moment. It's in full manual mode. I have a shutter speed of 1/30th of a second, ISO 400, and at the moment the aperture on the lens is set to f4, which is wide open for this lens. Okay, so the next thing to do would be to get the camera in the right position, height-wise, and also focus it up. So to do that, I'm just going to open up the viewfinder here, and I'll just wind the center column of the tripod up until the subject gets in the center of the viewfinder, roughly there somewhere I think. And with that I'll just focus up the lens about there. Okay, so with that now done, next thing to do would just be to take a test exposure. So just at the settings that I already have, just with the house lights, I'll grab an exposure and we'll see what we get. There we are, that's not too bad for a test. It's obviously the wrong color temperature as I'm only using the house lights for this experiment, but it gives you an idea of the sort of picture that we're going to end up with. Okay, so with that done, the next thing to do would be to change the settings so it's more appropriate for use with flash. And the idea being that I want to cut out all of this light which I've just used for this test. So I can start by putting the ISO down to 100. I'll use the flash sync speed, which is 1/125th of a second. And as for an aperture, I don't think f4 would be appropriate for this because it'll give far too narrow a depth of field. So I'm going to pick something more reasonable, like for instance f16. There we are. So with those settings, it should cut out all of this light. Yes, and there you go. We've got a completely black picture, which is exactly what I want. So now any flashlight which I add will be the only light which affects the subject. So this is what I'm going to use. This is a 500 dual flash head with a 2 foot by 2 foot softbox on the front of it. You don't need a great deal of energy for this, so something like a large flash gun would suffice, or something similar. And what I'm going to do with this is literally just place it at the back here. There we are, and that is going to form the backlight for my subject. Now, as you can probably see, I've got it very close to this piece of card and reasonably close to the subject, and the whole lot is in line in this direction. Okay, so just at an arbitrary energy level, what I'll do is grab an image and we'll see what we get. Okay, and there we see that we've got a starting point. It's a little down. I would think it's probably about 3 stops under as we are at the moment. So what I can do is add 3 stops of energy to this light just to bring the exposure up a bit. And I can do that from the flash sync trigger, which on this camera is built in. So we just go to the flash sync trigger, select that light, and add 3 stops. There we go. And we'll just grab that and see what difference we've made. And immediately you can see that that has brought up the exposure on the image quite a lot. But you're also getting an awful lot of flare. You can see all this black background isn't actually black. If you watch the numbers at the top of the screen, you can see that they're nowhere near to 0, which would be black. And that's because all this light is going straight into the lens and downgrading the image. So it needs to be flagged off. So here I have a couple of card flags, black on one side, white on the other, and I'm putting the black side towards the subject. There we are. So to get these in precisely the right position, what I'm going to do is use live view through the software here. So if I just start up live view, now as I move these in and out, you can see the effect it's having on the image. So I want to be in a position where it's covering the white part and just encroaching onto the black part. Okay, so we'll just do the other side. There, that seems to have worked quite well. So with that, I can get rid of live view and we just grab an image. There we are, and immediately you can see the difference that it's made to the contrast within the image. So this is what we had before, and this is what I've got now. So that's really starting to come along a little. But it's still not quite there yet. As I said in the introduction, I do need a little bit of fill-in on the front of this strawberry here. So for that, I've got a few more bits of card, and what I'm going to do is just place these so that this time it's the white side towards the subject, and that'll just reflect some of the light back on the subject again. So I'll place one at the bottom and we'll put another one at the top here, and I just have a peg to hold that in place. There we are. So with all those bits of card now in position, we'll grab the image again and see what happens. Okay, and immediately you can see the effect that's had. We've now got a very black background. The numbers at the top there have gone to 0, which is completely black, and we've got a nice fill-in effect at the front here. Okay, so for actually capturing the image, that's it. It's relatively straightforward. Just a few bits of card, a lab stand, and a small softbox. Right, so what I'm going to do now is go into Photoshop and just do the bare minimum of post-production. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I've loaded up the file of the image that I captured earlier. So the first thing I want to do is just make a copy of this, and the way that I prefer to do that is just to go onto the background layer here, right-click the mouse, ask for a duplicate layer, but ask for a new document. And we'll just call this Strawberry. There we are. So this is the file that I'll be editing. So the camera original I can just store away, and if I need it I can always go back to it. Okay, So what do I need to do to this? Well, the first thing that I really want to do is just make sure that this background here is actually completely black. Again, if you watch the numbers, you can see that they do vary ever so slightly. We're getting 1s and 2s in some places. So what I'm going to do is reset the black level, and there's lots of ways of doing that, but I'm just going to use an adjustment layer. So just click on Adjustments and just go for a Levels adjustment. And what I'm going to do is just use the icon at the side here to set the black point. So I'll just hover over the image, and wherever I can see that there is a level in the background, I can just click on that just to set it back to 0 again. There we are. Okay, so with that now completed, the next stage would just be to get rid of all the interference around the outside caused by the cardboard. So to do that, I'm just going to add another layer, and on this layer I'm just going to paint out these bits in black. So I'll just make sure that black is selected as the foreground colour, find a paintbrush, just make that a reasonable size, and just paint out all of those edges. There we are. And with that done, the next stage would just be to go for a crop. Now I'm going to use this for video, so I'm going to use a specific ratio. So once I've brought up the crop tool, I can select a ratio of 16:9. There we go. And I think I'd like to just rotate the image slightly within the frame there. So I'm just going to go to the corner here. We'll just turn that round. Something like that. So there we have it. So a relatively simple lighting technique can give quite striking results. And I think this, with the addition of that small amount of fill-in on the front, has worked rather well. Okay, well I hope you liked watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.